Hey everyone, I did a few series in the past on a few directors that I have great admiration for. David Fincher, Martin Scorcese, and Steven Soderbergh. In fact, I just finished up the Soderbergh series before the end of last year. But all three of these directors have had new movies come out within like the last couple of months, and so I wanted to talk about each of them. First, the most recent is Haywire. Haywire is directed by Steven Soderbergh. It stars Gina Carano, who was a mixed martial arts fighter and probably still is, but maybe she's going to get into acting now. She plays like a black ops person, you know, assassin, covert agent, something like that, who's subcontracted out by Ewan McGregor to the government to, you know, grab people, rescue them, or kill people, or abduct them, something like that. What's unique about this movie, of course, is that it has a lot of big stars in the supporting cast, but the lead character, of course, is not someone who is an experienced actress. And she does pretty well. I've heard conflicting reports about something that they did with her voice in post-production. Either they redubbed it with a different actress, or they just simply lowered it, made her sound a little bit more like Linda Fiorentino and less like Jennifer Garner. I don't know. I think she does fine in the part. I didn't think they need to lower her voice, but it does make her slightly more intimidating, I guess, than if she used her normal speaking voice, which I heard in an interview that she gave once. All in all, I like the movie. It's lots of fun. There's some good chases in there, and if I have complaints about it, Soderbergh does this thing where he cuts out all the music during the fight scenes, which is fine some of the time, but every single fight scene is like that one, and I thought it could have used a little bit of score for the climactic fight scene, which takes place on a beach. You know, just could have used something a little bit different. And also there's a scene where she's being chased around by a bunch of cops in Dublin, and at one point she hides, and then a couple of guys walk into her room, and then she beats them up. And there's a score during that scene, but then it completely shuts off while she's fighting with them. And then as soon as she's done, the score starts up again, and it's almost funny, actually, but unintentionally comic. The other problem that I have with it is that she's gone for much of the second half of the movie. She's just like not around. We don't see her. We don't see what she's doing. Instead, all the supporting guys are going, well, what do we do about her now? How are we going to deal with her? How are we going to find her? How are we going to stop her when she finds us? And she becomes sort of like Michael Myers in Halloween. You know, she'll just pop up all of a sudden, start you know, beating up people. So she's sort of like the boogeyman in the second half of the movie. Rather than being the main character, which she is for the first part of the movie, she just like is that person out there they're all afraid is going to find them and cause trouble. So I wanted to see more of her throughout the movie, whereas in the second half of the movie she's just kind of gone. But from what I understand, Steven Soderbergh kind of wrote the movie that way, just to sort of give her, you know, the stuff that he knew she could handle to do. Yeah, all in all, like the movie. Not one of my favorites. A fun movie. I wouldn't disrecommend it. Yeah, a couple of reservations about it. Not anything really serious. I like Gina Carano. She's like a tougher version of Anna Kendrick, you know, and I like Anna Kendrick, so there you go. Alright, so that's Haywire. Then we have Hugo, which is directed by Martin Scorsese. Hugo is, of course, a story of a kid. It's based on a children's book. It's a story about a kid who is hiding out in a train station. He has no parents or anyone watching. He's taking care of himself, stealing food, stealing, you know, whatever he can to, you know, survive. And he's also attending to the clocks in the train station. He's trying to escape the train station's inspector, who's played by Sacha Baron Cohen, so that he won't be carted off to the orphanage. That's basically the central sort of conflict there, the central danger that he's in. If he's discovered, he'll be put in the orphanage, and he doesn't want to go there. In the meantime, he meets a girl who happens to be the niece of one of the shop proprietors in the train station, guy who basically runs a toy store. But as it turns out, this guy is named George Méliès, and he is, in fact, the George Méliès who created a number of very influential, groundbreaking silent films back in the early part of the 20th century. A Trip to the Moon, basically, is his signature film, but he did, you know, lots and lots of movies, hundreds of movies, and about 80 of them were actually saved and can be viewed now. So the whole sort of conflict is the kid basically had this robot that his dad discovered. They were trying to fix it up, but when his dad died, he tried to fix it up himself. and he is looking for parts to fix the robot, and he thinks that the toy maker or the toy seller might have some. So he's stealing them and stuff, but he gets caught. And he gets some stuff taken away from him, and he's trying to get it back. I didn't really like this movie a heck of a lot. I like parts of it, especially when they focus more on George Méliès, the filmmaker, and some of his... There's a whole section at the end of the movie where they go into his past and watch him making his films, and they have a lot of his old films in the actual movie, which is really great, because since it's in 3D, they post-converted all the silent films. In fact, even some archival footage from that period into 3D, which is really bizarre. It's really great to see that stuff. But the problem is it becomes more a movie that's like a tribute to a person rather than a story. And that's a little disappointing. Some of the conflict in the end is pretty mild. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of danger happening there. It's not very dramatic. It's just basically the kid trying to get the filmmaker to come out of his shell and talk a little bit about his work. So the whole second half of the movie is basically just like a tribute to the director, which is nice and all that, but it doesn't make for a very exciting movie for me anyway. It's nominated for Best Picture and Best Director and all kinds of stuff, and I think there are more worthy movies. Not that the cause of film preservation is unworthy, but you know, it's just I don't know, just kind of sit there and learn stuff about it. It isn't it didn't entirely work for me. It's a good looking movie, that's for sure. Some of the 3D looked great. Some of it didn't work well. There's a scene where Sacha Baron Cohen pushes his face right into the lens, and that doesn't work because the top of the frame is cutting off, you know, his head. And, so it would look better if you could see his whole head. That would work better in 3D, but I don't know, what are you going to do? Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of disappointing. Not one of my favorite Scorsese movies. Then we come to, of course, David Fincher's movie, which is, of course, is the adaptation of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, from the novel by Stieg Larsson. And I've read all three of these books, and I've seen all three of the Swedish films. But I actually waited until after I'd seen Fincher's version before seeing those other ones. And I have to say that this was a movie that really I didn't get a lot out of because I knew everything that was going to happen. It's a faithful adaptation of the book. And although I read the book an entire year before I'd seen the movie, so much of the story and what happens in it, specific things that happen in it, were still very much in my head, clear as a bell. And so I just basically sat there waiting for things to happen. So as a suspense film, it really didn't work for me because I knew everything that was going to happen ahead of time. So it's really hard for me to judge the film on its own merits. Not that it's a badly made movie, it's fine. I just can't tell whether it's suspenseful or not. I can't tell whether the surprises work or not because I already knew everything. And I'd say this is probably one of the least necessary films that Fincher's made. I guess it's done well, I don't know. It was a film, a lot of people read the book and were really excited about the film, but it's hard for me to care as much about this film as some of Fincher's other movies. Because, it's just, nothing about it was really all that surprising. Now comparing it with the Swedish films, I'd have to say there are aspects of the Swedish films I like better than this one. But more specific moments and scenes rather than like the films overall, So all in all, I have a kind of a reaction, and quite frankly, I would prefer that David Fincher stop making movies about serial killers because he's done that. He's done that many times, and I want to see more Social Networks and more Zodiacs. Well, Zodiac's about a serial killer, but it's a real story. I guess. How about dark comedies? More movies like Fight Club, pitch black comedies like Fight Club. He seems very well suited to that. So, Haywire, a mild recommendation. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, a mild recommendation. And Hugo, I don't recommend unless you just want to see something that looks good in 3D. Yeah, all in all, not, kind of disappointing. I didn't expect a lot from Haywire, but I'd say I'd like that more relative to my expectations than I did the other two, which is really bizarre. Anyway, so that's what I thought of those movies. Thanks very much for watching. Take it easy.